One of my absolute favorite things to do during the holiday season is advent calendars. Giving yourself a little present every day? Sign me up. And so last year I did a puzzle advent calendar and made a video out of it, and each puzzle that went with each day would lead me to a book that I would choose from my existing TBR, just based off of whatever the picture was on the puzzle. Did that video perform well? No. Was it the most number of books that I've ever had to read for a single video? Yes. So why am I doing it again? Wait, why am I doing this again? Oh yeah, because I want to. I want to. Hi, my name is Sarah Freshly, and welcome back to Freshly Read Books. So while I enjoyed last year's puzzle advent calendar, I did think that there were some challenges that came along with trying to pick books based off of pictures that are all painted by the same artist, and so a lot of it was very similar, and it was hard to really pull from to choose books that I had to read. So in December of last year, after I had finished that puzzle advent calendar, I decided that I would take a different puzzle, a 1,000-piece puzzle, split it into 12 different sections, and then on the back of each section, writing down a prompt that I would then use this year. So basically, I would put together the puzzle pieces to a section, flip it over, and read the prompt, and then that would be the prompt for that section. And my hope was that by doing it a year ago, I would have forgotten the prompts by the time that it actually came up to do it this year, which was for the most part true. I only remembered one prompt before going into this challenge, and there were a couple that once I saw them, I remembered doing. And then there were some that I don't remember choosing at all, or why I would choose them. There are still improvements that I could make. Speaking of, I didn't get through all 12 prompts for this video. It is the day before I'm hoping to upload this as I'm sitting down to film this, so obviously I ran out of time. 8 books, still a lot. Not as good as 12, but you know, here we are. Okay, so how this worked. Obviously, I am filming this after I have already completed, I was going to say the challenge, but I didn't technically complete it because I didn't do 12, but completed what I'm gonna complete. So the only thing that makes this different than an actual advent calendar is that I didn't open a new section of puzzle every day, but instead I would do a section of the puzzle, find out the prompt, read the book, and then I could continue on to the next one. So this is the hope that nothing would be slowing me down at any point in this except for my own reading speed. Oh, I also started this technically on November 29th instead of December 1st like I had originally planned, because I had finished the book that I was reading at the time and I just wanted to get started, but I do realize that makes it even worse that I didn't actually finish the entire thing. Anyways, let's talk about the first prompt. So on the eve of the month of December, I set out on my journey of puzzles, books, and festive cheer. The weather outside was frightful. Just kidding, it was 79 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 26 degrees Celsius. But the AC was delightful. And yeah, I started my puzzle. Remember, this is one section of a 1,000-piece puzzle, so the picture itself isn't going to make a lot of sense without the greater picture that it's a part of. And this one was surprisingly hard to start off with because there was no edge pieces. It was all just a middle section. But eventually I got through it, and then I realized that I had no plan for how I was going to flip over the puzzle pieces so that I could read the prompt on the back. So then I tried to do it with the box and just my hand, thinking that that would somehow work. It didn't. Then I had to redo the puzzle, reflip it over with some notebooks, and then that worked better, and I think I ended up using that for every other puzzle section for the rest of this video. Anyways, so the first prompt was shortest on TBR. Also for this video, I ended up choosing only books that were on my physically owned TBR. I did technically count library books, although I don't think that I ever used one. I wanted to. I very much wanted at least one of the 2 library books I currently have to be on this list and for me to read them, since obviously there's more pressure to read those so that I can return them to the library, but that didn't happen. So everything was selected from my physically owned TBR. And it was really easy to pick the first one because I have a children's book on my TBR, or had a children's book on my TBR, which is Fantastic Mr. Fox by Roald Dahl. And this is on my TBR because I wanted to read it before watching the Wes Anderson film, because I'm a book nerd that abides by the unspoken rule that you have to read the book before watching the movie. Not saying necessarily that all book nerds do that, but if you don't, then you're a rebel and you're very cool, but I am just not that. So this book was even shorter than I realized it was because it's actually got a section of a different book in it, as well as this nice quiz, this multiple choice 5-question quiz, which, not to brag or anything, but I got a 100%. I know, thank you, save your applause. I do think that this deserves a sticker though, because I am totally awesome. Okay, I don't want to cover up the word Festivus, This is my Festivus sweater, as this is my Festivus video. Although, do I have grievances to air in this video? Oh, I do. There was a book I did not like. That's just a little spoiler for later. Anyways, obviously this was a very easy read, and it wasn't very good. Sorry, but I just felt like the plot was a little boring, a little repetitive, and the ending like wasn't even that good for like the people involved. Basically, the plot is that Mr. Fox here steals like chickens, ducks, and turkeys from these 3 local farmers who are mad at him because he's stealing from them. I mean, they're definitely rude, but the book didn't really give me like a huge reason to dislike them besides that. I mean, some of the things that it gave me to as like reasons to dislike them were a lot about like their bodies and how gross they are. But like their whole motivation in the entire thing is to get back at Mr. Fox, who is taking their livestock. And like, true, they do want to kill Mr. Fox, but Mr. Fox wants to kill their chickens, and he doesn't refer to them as Mr. Chickens, even though later on we get to see Mr. Rabbit, who would historically be eaten by Mr. Fox, but isn't for some reason, and I just want to know where the line is. What's that? I should stop reviewing this children's book because it literally doesn't matter? Well, guess what? You're wrong. Strawman argument that I made. Children's books can be good, and this is just not one of them. It's officially not totally awesome. So on November 30th, I went ahead with prompt number 2. This wound up being the top left corner, so a much easier section to do since I had 2 edges along this puzzle. My camera did die partway through this one, so I had to film the rest of it on my phone. So this prompt was a hyped book, a book that I have heard a lot of hype about. Initially, I struggled with this one because I didn't feel like I had a lot of books on my shelves that were all that hyped, but then I remembered Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. If you haven't heard about this at this point, like I don't even know what to tell you. If there is a nonfiction section in your bookstore, chances are this is front and center, even if you live in another country. I saw this in so many different languages while I was traveling this year. There is a graphic novel version of it now. They're doing a like TV show or TV series or something about it. I just recently listened to an episode of Factually with Adam Conover talking to Yuval Noah Harari, although it was about a different book. Actually, it was mostly about this book, but it was for press for his upcoming book. So Sapiens is a book that covers basically all of the history of humanity, starting with like the evolution of the human body and how we got here and our place on Earth, but then evolving into things like religion, civilization, currency, all of these things that make up our world and how they slowly changed over time to become what they are today. For a while, I was starting my morning with reading just little bits and pieces of this book, which is why it was taking so long, but I did really love reading it that way. It is awesome starting your day with this because it really puts life in general into perspective. Like, my little stressors aren't really that big of a deal, and that things can matter to me even if they don't like really matter in the grand scheme of things. I hope that sounds inspiring and not depressing, because that's kind of how the book feels. It's like, I think that you can read it and it can seem a little bit depressing, but depending on the way you choose to look at it, it can also be really inspiring. Now it is time for my third puzzle section. This was on December 2nd, and I was feeling really proud of my pace. I mean, I know I started early and one book was a children's book and the other one I was already halfway through. Did I just talk myself out of being proud retrospectively? Nah, I'm still proud. The prompt on this one was a book set in multiple countries, which I had zero recollection of selecting that prompt. My mind first went to Waypoints by Robert Martineau because that's a walk through a few countries in Africa, but I just read A Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson, so I was just reading about somebody taking a walk through many states instead of countries, but still. So looking through my shelves, I also ended up finding Astonish Me, which is set in multiple countries, and How to Stop Time by Matt Haig. So I let this up to my Instagram to decide. I put all 3 of these books on my Instagram, asked for you guys to vote. I do this pretty regularly, I would say, because I apparently am incapable of choosing books to read myself. So follow me there if you want input on which books I read. So that's right, I've read Astonish Me by Maggie Shipstead. And you know what? You really came through. So thank you. This was a really good book. So Astonish Me is mostly set in the US, but it does also have quite a few flashbacks to the main character's time in France, so it does still fit the multiple country prompt. And I mean, Paris is on the cover, so that should mean something. So it's about this woman, Joan, who is a ballet dancer. She is pregnant in the beginning of the book, so you kind of like find out she's pregnant in the first chapter, and she's doing, I think, her last dance that she ever ends up doing, or she's a part of her last ballet that she'll ever be in. And that's where the story kicks off. So you are following her navigating this time and kind of creating this family unit. Joan in particular is a really fascinating person because she spent so much of her life in pursuit of one goal and making sure that her body is working towards her and servicing her towards that goal, and her mind and all of her time is put into this. And then she's got this other section of her life that now that stuff can't matter at all. It feels like this stark contrast between her life as a ballet dancer and her life as a part of a family. I wanted to say as a mom, but it's not just about her being a mom. It's about her being a wife, her being a friend and neighbor, and later her having her own career outside of being a performer. So yeah, great book. And the characters were super well written. I could totally see how Maggie Shipstead would go on to write Great Circle, which also had wonderful, wonderful characters, even more so. So yeah, Astonish Me really walked so that Great Circle could fly. Get it? Because Great Circle is about flying. Oh wait, maybe it should be Astonish Me Dance so that a Great Circle could fly. But then is flying better than dancing? Yeah, it is. I think we could all agree that flying is better than dancing, right? I kind of feel like the saying has lost all meaning. So on December 7th, I wound up getting to my next section of the puzzle featuring a nail polish change. I know, exciting stuff. Sorry, I'm just now realizing the puzzle sections are not all that fun for this, and I don't have anything to say before the prompt's revealed. Anyways, this is actually the prompt that I did remember. I don't know why, it just stuck in my head and stayed there for all year. So I really only had two options, and the first one was this book of short stories for beginners in Spanish that I just got to help improve my Spanish and to see, you know, how well I could do at reading Spanish at this point. And so that one seemed a little weird to read and review for this channel. So instead I went with my only other option, which was Rogues, True Stories of Grifters, Killers, Rebels, and Crooks by Patrick Radden Keefe, which I didn't really want to do because I wanted to read Say Nothing first, but there's no real reason for that. It doesn't really matter which one I read first, right? And I am currently reading Say Nothing. You hear that, Jill? I'm doing it. I'm reading it. And we're gonna talk all about it. Anyways, I had kind of mixed feelings about this one. Some of the stories I really got into, and then some of them felt kind of meh, which it seems like that's the main criticisms about it, is just that it's very inconsistent. I also think he didn't do a great job of setting up some of the stories to where I didn't know what was going on. Oh, I should also say this was sent to me by Doubleday Publishing. But to let you know what my favorites were, I did write them down. That would be A Loaded Gun, Winning, The Worst of the Worst, and also Journeyman. Journeyman was very different than the other ones because it was about Anthony Bourdain, which didn't really feel like he fit the unsavory character archetype that the rest of the people that were represented in these articles or in these short stories fit into, but I still found it really interesting, so I was okay with it. It just felt like an outlier in the collection as a whole. And so on to the next section. I returned to puzzle yet again. This time I was really hoping to choose a smaller book because I felt like I was starting to suffer from really spending so long with each book and trying to rush to get through them. But you know what? I had to keep going. You know what they say. Don't ever give up. This is the moment of the video when I need extra courage. There we go. Okay, so this prompt I once again did not remember creating at all, although it totally makes sense for me, which is a book set in nature. But the funny thing is I had just read a ton of books that were set in nature that would have fit this really well and were pretty short, so I didn't have a ton left to choose from that were on my physically owned TBR. But I did have this nice short book called Sacred Nature on my TBR. No, wait. I want to read this longer one instead. Okay, it's not that long, but it is funny to me that I could have chosen a smaller book that literally had nature in the title, but I didn't because I didn't want to read another nonfiction book right away. And now I kind of wish I had, because we did it. We made it to the book I didn't like in this video. It is officially time to air our grievances.
The tradition of Festivus begins with the airing of grievances. I got a lot of problems with you people. Now, you're gonna hear about it.
So this book is The Seaplane on Final Approach, which is set in the Alaskan wilderness. And it seemed like it had everything that I would like. Oh, and this was also sent to me by Doubleday Publishing. You know, you can't win them all. No, I mean, I'm sure other people would like this book. I just really didn't. Okay, I thought that this was gonna be right at my alley because one, love Alaska. I mean, I've only been once in a very small section. It's a huge state, but I loved it. And I like the atmosphere of it, so I was excited about that. I like books set in nature, as we've already covered. And it's at this wilderness lodge which is also something that I like. There's supposed to be like this greater danger going on besides like just the wilderness. And yeah, so I was very excited about all of that. Now, I didn't end up finishing this book. I made it like 100 pages to the end, and I thought about just finishing it because like, why not? But I was so bored of it, and I was so annoyed at the main character. Really all of the characters and the plot and everything about it. So the main character is like in love with her cousin that she met once. And I think it's because he was like basically the only male that was in her life that she like got to see, and he was a little bit older. And so she kind of attached these like feelings that she was developing as a human being, but put them on to not the right person, blood relative. And she also is like obsessed with the word sleazy. If you want to get like absolutely trashed, just take a shot every time the word sleaze or sleazy comes up in this book. Actually, don't do that. Like, please don't. I can't be held responsible for this medically. So never mind. Don't do that. But just know, if you were to, you would be dead, probably. I can only assume. But yeah, she's like obsessed with the concept of sleaziness. She talks about it all the time. And when she's not talking about that, she's talking about her cousin, even though she only saw him for a short amount of time. I mean, he may come back by the end, but I wouldn't know, because I'm not going to finish this book. Loved the cover though. Like, cover design, A+. Everything else, you flunked. You flunked out, sorry. I feel kind of bad, but also I hated that. Okay, another day, another puzzle. And for this one, I got the prompt of multiple POVs. For this one, I believe I was thinking of like chapters where one chapter would be voiced or like from the perspective of one person, and then it would kind of like switch between characters and everything. This is something that's used a lot in thriller books and that I typically like in thrillers. So I think that I was hoping for something along those lines when I initially added this prompt, but none of my thrillers had that. And in fact, I had very few books in general that had it. The number of books that I went through on my shelf to try to find the one that would fit this. But then the Festivus gods shined down upon me. Or actually, maybe it's just like holiday. It was at a holiday party, but I'm really just like sticking to this Festivus thing now. So, but I went to my book club's holiday party, and we do this little like book swap where you bring a book wrapped in wrapping paper, and then we do like this random like shuffling game basically, and you wind up with somebody else's book that they brought, you open that, and then that's your new book. And actually, my Festivus angel gave me 2 books. My Festivus angel, also known as my friend. She brought 2 books, and I wound up with 2 books wrapped together as one. So I feel like the true winner. These were Beach Read, which everybody in the entire world, at least as far as BookTube is concerned, has heard about. And also When in Rome, which has multiple POVs. It goes back and forth, chapter by chapter, between Amelia here and Noah. We did it, folks. Thank you. Thank you, Festivus gods. Also, it's by Sarah Adams, and she spells her name with an H. So we know we can trust her. Sorry to Sarah's without H's. It's not that I can't trust you, it's that I don't inherently trust you like I do for Sarah's with H's. There's just a kinship there. And then there's just like a slightly muted kinship with Sarah's without H's. And then there's everybody else in the world. There's all the non-Sarahs for after that. Okay, so When in Rome, contrary to the title, is not set in Rome, Italy. It's set in Rome, Kentucky, which is like part of the joke. Basically, we have a retelling of Roman Holiday, which is an Audrey Hepburn movie. Our main character here, Amelia, is obsessed with Audrey Hepburn. She loves her movies, and she's also this like pop star that like wants to get away from her life, and she's too stressed out, and so she wants to do like a Roman Holiday situation, which if you haven't seen the movie, that is about Audrey Hepburn playing a princess who wants to get away from her life for a little bit, and so she escapes into like the town of Rome and like hangs out for a while and lives a more like normal life than what she's used to. So Amelia here, she can't get to actual Rome, so she puts in Google where the nearest Rome is, and she goes there. And it happens to be Rome, Kentucky, because she lives in Nashville. I don't know if this is a real place, but I would be willing to bet that it is, because like in Indiana, there was a Lima, was it Lima, Indiana? And there was also a, oh my God, what is the Beach Boys song? Why can't I think of it right now? Aruba, Jamaica, take it, Bahamas, pretty mama, Key Largo, Montego. Kokomo. That was further into the song than I remembered it when I committed to trying to sing right up to that line. Kokomo. There's a Kokomo, Indiana. So I believe that there's a Rome, Kentucky. But anyways, Amelia goes to Rome, Kentucky. She winds up meeting Noah, who is the owner of this pie shop and who doesn't want to think anything of her, have any feelings at all towards her, about her, because in the past there's been a woman that has come through town that he fell in love with, and then it ended up really hurting him in the end. So he's like,
never again, especially not for somebody that clearly has a life very separate from my own that she has to go back to. And if you've been watching this channel for a while, you may know that I love rom-com movies. The worse and the more cringy they are, the better for me personally, but that love does not historically translate to rom-com books, even though I've tried to get it to many times. Last year, in fact, I did a video that was like reading 3 or 4 rom-com Christmas books and hoping that I would like get those same feelings, and I didn't for any of them. It was a major fail. But this book, I ended up really liking it. It gave me like the same feelings, same or similar. I do think actually the multiple perspectives or the multiple POV really helped me. It's got a bit of that grumpy sunshine dynamic, so yay to the characters, and yay to the author, and yay to me for finally finding a rom-com book that I like. Was it completely random how I got this book? Yes. Do I still think I deserve a sticker? Also yes. But like, which one am I gonna use? Oh, perfect, I found it. Snailed it. Does the joke continue to be funny the more stickers I put on, or does it get less funny? Don't answer that, unless you're gonna say the first thing, in which case, thank you. Okay, and then prompt/book number 7. So for this puzzle section, it led me to the prompt 1-word title. So I had quite a few on my bookshelf that could fit this prompt. Jailbird by Kurt Vonnegut, Groundskeeping by Lee Cole, Lessons by Ian McEwan, Elsewhere by Alexis Shaitkin. And while I considered leaving it up to Instagram again to decide, I instead decided to do myself a favor and choose the shortest book. And that was Elsewhere by Sayaka Murata and translated by Ginny Tapley Takamori. This was a really great book. Difficult to read in some points, absolutely wild in others, but overall just a really good book. This follows a young girl, Natsuki, who has this little hedgehog toy that's shown on the cover here that is something of like a comfort to her while she's growing up, and becomes almost like a coping mechanism for her after something truly awful happens to her, and really like several times happens to her. But this hedgehog is someone she is able to talk to, and she's kind of creates this imaginary world for herself where she has magical powers, and there's this faraway planet, which is where her hedgehog is from. And this ends up including her cousin as well, who says he's from another planet, and she's like, oh, you're probably from the same planet that like my hedgehog is from. But while this starts as something like more innocent and just like a sweet childhood thing, it ends up being something that really helps her later in life as she's dealing with things that she is going through and that happened to her. She really relies on seeing herself in this way, seeing herself as someone who doesn't belong here. Also, one of my favorite parts about it were the conversations on her body and how it never felt like her body was truly her own, which we already talked about in this video with Astonish Me. But this is more in the sense of her body is for other people. In marriage, it's for the man. It's like for his pleasure, and it's always in support of him. And it's her duty to have children, for her body to be for creating life. The conversation around all that is sad, but beautiful and interesting to think about. Okay, puzzle 8. This ended up, of course, being the last prompt, considering I only read 8 books for this video instead of the full 12. This puzzle prompt section was set in space, which once again, I didn't have a ton to choose from. So I had books from the Expanse series, which are far too large to read in something like this. And then I had books from the Dune series, which I could have read Dune Messiah. It's not that long, but then luckily I went through and decided to check out my Kurt Vonnegut books to see if any of the 3 that I hadn't read yet that are on my shelf were set in space. And fortunately, the Sirens of Titan is set in space. So this was my pick. I ended up reading it very short, so that worked out perfectly. So the Sirens of Titan is about a man who goes into space. He lives a large portion of his life off of Earth, comes back to Earth. There's another guy that like can kind of tell the future. I don't know, it's really hard to sum up this book actually because there's just a lot going on, but I think that it was a fun book. It had another good like idea that I liked thinking a lot about. However, I do think that this does suffer a bit from the time period that it was written in. This is Kurt Vonnegut's second novel that he wrote after Player Piano, which I have also read. So far, of all the books of his that I've read, these are the 2 books that I have liked the least, although I definitely liked this one more than Player Piano. But what I mean by suffered from the time period, I think that a lot of authors, especially male authors of the time, don't write women super well. There's just certain things that they say about them or ways that those characters speak that it's just like a little bit grating, and it does feel like a product of its time. But one of the ideas that I most liked from this was that, so this book is set a little bit in the future, and religion still exists in the US and is largely focused on like a specific god, like one god. But the idea around it is that he is ambivalent towards humans, that he doesn't really care like what humans are doing. And so to say something like thank God about something that happens in your life is actually really rude, because by saying that you're basically implying that God cared enough to make something happen in a specific way for you, and also implying that you are greater than other people, that like God took a special interest in you, whereas like the predominant belief is that he doesn't care about anybody. So like why do you think he cares about you? And I thought that that was fun. Anyways, those are all the prompts. Here is me piecing together all of these sections of the puzzle. In order to keep these together, like while I was doing this whole thing, I put tape on the back, like painter's tape on the backs of the puzzles, just to keep the sections themselves together, which is something that I learned from Karen, from the channel Karen Puzzles. If I were to do this again, I think I would pick more open-ended prompts that would make it easier to pick shorter books or books that I am already excited about like during that time period. But yeah, please let me know if you want to see me do this again in December of 2023, and then I will create it now so that hopefully I'll forget the prompts again by the time it comes around. Overall, I would say that I am proud of myself for getting through 8 books. It's not quite as good as the 12 I was able to get through it last year, but 8, you know what, still impressive. And so obviously I think that I deserve one last sticker for this to round this out, which is gonna have to be fry your best, because I fried my best. And my best was 8 books. And we'll just put that one right there. Imagine if I forgot to take these off to go to Christmas trivia tonight. Anyways, let me know in the comments what your favorite type of advent calendar is. Is it the chocolate ones? Is it the little Lego ones where you like slowly make a little Lego scene? I'm pretty sure those are for children, but so are historically advent calendars, but now they're for everybody, right? Is it one of those like wine ones? We have a beer one that we're doing, a German beer one that we got from Costco. The cheese ones are great. I've done tea ones in the past. Let me know. And also let me know what your favorite book in December has been so far. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Consider subscribing for more fun in the new year if you haven't already. And I will be back with another video next week. See you then. Bye.